Hey everyone, it's me, Ari Dawson Rashid. I'm your anthropologist and sociologist. Quick video. When you read in the book of Genesis about the Tower of Babel, I want you to consider the following. Why would a multitude of people submit to a pervert? Let's think about Nimrod. Nimrod was sexually involved with his own mother, Semiramis. And they had the baby together, Tammuz. But even before Tammuz was born, Nimrod was a hunter. That's what he used to do, hunting wild animals. So this hunter, who had this incestuous relationship with his own mother, he came up with this idea, let's build a city so we can all stick together. I'm sorry, but why would you give into something like that? And think about it. The entire earth was available to these people. For those that preferred colder climates, you could move up to the north. Siberia, Europe, north of Europe. Or you could even go to the Himalayas in the east. If you want to start your own farm, my God, look at how many rivers were on the earth. Or you could start your own farm. You want to travel, guess what? There were no border controls. And even wild animals were not that spread all over the earth yet. You want a more warmer climate? Well, you can go more to the south. There are islands over there. I mean, the Caribbean, let's say the Rocky Mountains, Himalayas, the Alps in Europe. By the way, the Sahara Desert wasn't that big. Yes, there's a lot of lakes over there, with rainforests over there also. Yeah, New Zealand was empty. Australia, think about that. Japan, Korea with its mountainous landscape. Yeah, the South Asia as a subcontinent was also there. I mean, people, think about it. The entire earth was available. Why would the human population back then, which were few in number, decide to submit to an incestuous theocracy? Because that is what Nimrod established, an incestuous theocracy. And in this incestuous theocracy, they also institutionalized sexual violence against men. A portion of the men who were expected to do service for the new government were castrated. What? You're going to sexually mutilate the men you want to install in the government? So the men you consider qualified enough to govern, you castrate them? What? Oh, because if they start families, they may become powerful. You don't want that. Oh, what the heck is this? Just think about it. The whole establishment of Babylon and the Tower of Babel, it does not add up. There was nothing rational, not realistic about this. Why would you want to be trapped in a city with all these rules and regulations limiting you, while you could just move out, start your own village anywhere on the earth? Is that what human beings want? Freedom? But guess what? That is your assumption, that people want freedom. No, fallen mankind does not want freedom. Freedom is the ability to act in harmony with your design unhindered. Liberty, which a counterfeit of freedom is, you can act as far as people allow you to act. Very big difference. So the fact that freedom was available to everyone on the earth, there were no financial markets, there were no debts, there were no prisons, there were no militaries, none of that. The fact freedom was available to everyone, but the public came together in unity against freedom to lock themselves up in a city governed by an incestuous theocracy that mandated sexual mutilation of the quote-unquote quality men. I mean, whoa, this is quite insane. Let me tell you one thing. Fallen mankind is not rational. Fallen mankind is hyper-emotional. Fallen mankind doesn't care at all if something is true or if something is valuable or if something is even worthwhile. When fallen mankind gets terrified, anything goes to justify their escape. Anything goes. They will submit to anything that will justify their escape. In this case, people came together under an incestuous theocracy that mandated sexual mutilation of the quote-unquote qualified men amongst them. We want to be under something like that. I'm telling you, boo, someone who's terrified of facing life. The people back then were terrified of facing life. They were. So they escaped by trapping themselves into this city structure. There's nothing wrong with building a city. There's nothing wrong with the city in itself. But why is a city established? That's what you need to ask yourself. We need to learn from this. When human beings join forces together, it is because there's a definitive outcome that they're longing for. Look, if when construction workers come together under a supervisor, they do this to construct a building, whether it's a mall or a church or a homeless shelter, whatever it is. There's a definitive outcome they're longing for. When people of salsa come together under a dance instructor and they learn salsa, what is the definitive outcome they want? To be able to do salsa fluently. When people who want to learn Spanish come together, what's the definitive outcome they're longing for so they all can speak Spanish? Why? Because once you speak Spanish, you can, start a business in Latin America. You can, move to a Hispanic country or whatever. So what I'm saying is that one definitive outcome, speaking Spanish, can lead to other definitive outcomes that they're longing for. But anyway, when human beings join forces together, that teamwork aims at a definitive outcome. So what is the definitive outcome they're longing for? Look, let's look at the KKK. Okay? Terrorist, racist organization, KKK. What was the definitive outcome they were longing for? They wanted to avoid facing their own community failures. That's why they came up with ideology that everything that's not European like them is less valuable, less important. So this whole white supremacy they held on to was just a compensation so they wouldn't have to look at their own community failures. And when you are ignoring your own community failures, it will bring forth stress and embarrassment. So who became the outlet? Quote unquote black people in the United States. So when you hear about the KKK, you may think their definitive outcome was they wanted to get rid of black people. No, that was their method. them having a negative focus on quote-unquote black people, or what today we call the African Americans, was their method to preserve the definitive outcome is that they didn't want to look at their own community failures. Because the quote-unquote African Americans back then were contributing to the United States of America. They were. So why would they be upset when people were contributing? And it's because there may be some of their own were not contributing that they didn't want to admit. So in this case, the people that formed the KKK that want the definitive outcome in mind to avoid face or community failures. That's why there were mosques at those ceremonies also. That's why they burned crosses. I mean, if the cross was a symbol of European civilization, why are you burning it? It doesn't add up. Look, I've used the KKK as an example. It may appear that the KKK was all about hating people of color. No, the real issue was they didn't want to admit failures within. And that is one I want you to understand. When the groups of people come together, their definitive motive for being together may not always be obvious. It may not be. But it doesn't mean there's no definitive reason, because without that definitive reason, they won't even be together. For example, why would people establish a political party? Now, this may be easier to see through, because politics is all about forcing an outcome that people normally wouldn't accept, but you trick people into accepting the outcome because you know the outcome cannot be justified. Okay, let's say you have a Labour Party, and you have people become a member of a Labour Party. The main theme of the party is labor. So you expect people who are workers, who work in factories, who work on the field, on farms, you expect the workers to join this party because it's about labor. So people who spend most of their life working, it's reasonable for them to join the party. But now you also have people join the Labour Party who aren't actually working. So now you need to think about what's the purpose of this Labour Party to begin with. Look at what they're standing for. They stand for, let's say, minimum wage, workers' rights, and all that. So what is the actual definitive outcome they're aiming for? They do not want to be at the mercy of quote-unquote rich people. Now, they have no choice but to get along with quote-unquote rich people, but they don't want to be at their mercy. So their definitive outcome is they want a balance in how they deal with the quote-unquote rich people. They don't mind having to work for the rich. They just want the rich to think they can dispose of it anytime. That is the definitive reason and definitive outcome they're longing for in the Labour Party. Let's say you have a right-wing party, and they don't want all these labor rights, none of those things. Hold on a minute. Are you telling me they want to be able to do whatever they want financially with no regard for other people as much as possible? Yes. That's what they want. So why would any human being in their right mind join a movement like that? It is because there's certain people in their life that they can't stand, that they want to go off against. But because they lack the resources to attack other people without being arrested or whatever, that's why they join a group. So now the group will do the violence against people that they don't like. That's why. So it has nothing to do with freedom, nothing to do with none of those things. It all has to do with people want to ventilate unrest. Look, escaping is a main problem in fallen mankind. That's why they're fallen mankind, because of the escapism. So the motive of escaping, you'll encounter it a lot. I'm not saying that all the time when people come together, every time it's only about escaping. No. There are times people come together and they actually want to contribute in a good way. That happens. You can have rescue workers come together to look for someone who's missing. You can have people coming together to build a homeless shelter for the homeless, whatever. People can come together and do good with good motives. That exists. Unfortunately, in the world, often people come together. It has nothing to do with doing something good or by looking after one another. All it has to do with they want to escape God's will. With the Tower of Babel, you can even read it in the Bible. Their definitive reason, which also different outcome they longed for, was to avoid being scattered all over the earth. They did not want responsibility over all the earth. They just wanted a little space of relief where they were unbothered and left alone by what happened on the earth. They're on the earth, but they don't want to be responsible for the earth. That is what they're longing for. And to get this relief, which they knew was not justified, which they knew didn't add up, they need an excuse why they were locking themselves up into that city. Remember, there were no enemy nations on the earth back then. Even wild animals were not spread all over the earth yet. The earth was vacant for the most part of human occupation. Yet, you had a lot of gold, silver, precious stones everywhere. You had rainforests. The earth was vacant for the most part. There was no reason for them to lock themselves up into that city. Why would you build a city and lock yourself up in it when there's the whole earth available to you? They needed an excuse to do this because they knew they couldn't justify it and get away with it. So they submitted onto this weirdo, Nimrod, who was in incestuous relationship with his own mother, who started at the theocracy, which mandated sexual mutilation of quality men around. Now, were all the people back then, at that time, into incestuous affairs with their parents? No. Were all the people back then into, sexually mutilating men of quality? No. Were all the people back then into all these weird rituals and religious symbols, all that? No. As a matter of fact, a lot of people back then likely couldn't stand all of that. Yet why did they put up with it? Because if they did not put up with Nimrod's bullshit, they would have no choice but to own up to their cowardice and their failure to live life to the full. That's why. That is why. So what am I teaching you here? Beware what people put up with. One thing you notice about people in the world, the only time they open their mouth and they direct into your face is when they perceive you as weaker than them and they can get away being insensitive towards you. If you are a police officer, or if you are a judge in a courthouse, or if you have strong political connections, people will be very careful how they treat you. You can be talking all the time about a topic people are not interested in, but nobody will tell you to shut up or to be quiet. Why? Because they know if they treat you a certain way that's going to be painful for you and make you feel bad, that will trigger some consequence on them they don't want to put up with. Whether it's imprisonment or whether it's people who are associated with you withdrawing benefits from them, which means you will suffer financial harm, or they know there's going to be an outcome following that they can't walk away from, and it's going to haunt them, and they don't want to end up in that situation. So that's why they learn to deal with you talking a lot. But if it's one of their husbands or wives or children that talks a lot, saying, be quiet, whatever. They're more comfortable being insensitive and loose towards the individual. Why? Because they have the ability to get away with it. Because that other individual doesn't have that much leverage. People in the world behave based on what they can get away with. So, look at people in the world. They will not gather together and go to the tax office and burn that place down, do whatever against the tax office because they're upset their money is taken from them and nothing good is done with the money. They will not go to the president or vice president or whatever and act out their anger over there. But they will look around in their own neighborhood and select one of the children who's a bit vocal and say, well, he has a big mouth. Well, why doesn't parents teach him respect, blah, blah, blah. What? A child that's a bit talkative is such a problem to you all? Huh? While you have criminals and politicians taking advantage of you, lying to you? Here's why. They can easily shut down that child with violence. And if they do it in an organized way, they never get away with it. But to go after the politician or the banker who has connections everywhere, if the bank or politician goes missing, it's going to be a response. And once people find out what they've done, they're in trouble. Now, why am I mentioning this? Understand the following. People in the world, they are clear about not wanting to lose control. They're clear about wanting to be left alone. They're clear about wanting to have ease. So anything that disrupts them having ease, they want nothing to do with. But here's the thing. If everyone wants ease and nobody owns up to anything, guess what? Nothing will work out. So nobody wants to, nobody wants to take all the charge on them because others will run away. You're left by yourself. Nobody wants to be the victim or to be collateral damage someone else escape, but at the same time, everyone wants to escape. How will this work? It cannot work. So that's why worldlings come together in this thing called society, which the Bible calls the world, in which they submit to restrictive patterns and they act like they have no other choice. And anyone who questions those restrictive patterns, they attack. That's society. That's what they were doing at Babel, at the Tower of Babel. That's what we're doing over there. And that's exactly what worldlings are doing till this day. Generation of generation, century of century, they do the exact same thing. There are different expressions of it. Some are left-wing, some are right-wing, some are militaristic, some are more focused on trade. You have diverse religions that developed with different focuses. Nevertheless, it all comes down to people submitting to restrictive patterns, to restrictions, and at the same time acting like they have no other choice. Because as long as they tell each other that they don't have any other choice, they don't have to. They can relieve themselves temporarily from feeling guilty and feeling horrible about themselves for doing this to themselves. So the moment anyone amongst them decides to dominate it, we don't have to be so restricted. We don't have to put up with this. We don't, like, for example, at the Tower of Babel, the people did not have to submit to Nimrod and his crazy mom. They didn't have to submit to the weird philosophy. They didn't have to submit to the organized sexual mutilation of quality men. They didn't have to submit to living within constructed walls. They didn't have to be under the threat of being thrown into prisons. They didn't have to put up with any of that. They could all just walk out and start over on the earth. But why didn't they do that? Because they didn't want to. They wanted to escape. And thing is, because as human beings they need other human beings to remain functional, they don't want everyone to escape just like them. Everyone wants to escape, but they don't want to have to deal with the consequence when else escape. So the only way that can function is if people are controlled. So people in the world, they want to be controlled. They want to be controlled. So in return, they want to control you. The moment you don't allow them to control you, there's a problem because you're breaking the cycle. That's what it is. Look, when people come together, ask yourself, what is the definitive outcome they're longing for? What is the definitive outcome that pushes people together? If it's not clear to you what the definitive outcome is, it is likely because the definitive outcome is not something they can justify. And don't be mistaken with confusing their definitive outcomes with their methods. Their methods are a way to get to the definitive outcome. But it's not that the method is the definitive outcome. For example, the KKK had aversion towards people of color as a means for them not to have to look at their own failures of their own community. So it would be easy to think, well, they just want to harm people of color. No. The hostility towards people of color is a method, but it's not the definitive outcome they're longing for. So always ask yourself this question. What is the definitive outcome people are longing for? And how far are they willing to go to get that definitive outcome? In the time of the Tower of Babel, people were willing to submit and be trapped by a incestuous theocracy where you had sexually mutilated men in office. They were willing to put up with this just so they could be left alone and have their ease. And I'm telling you also, a lot of people out there you'll encounter, they may complain about problems in their lives. They may complain about all type of stuff. And sometimes their complaints are legitimate. Not all complaining is wrong. But the question is, what are they doing about it? Guess what? They're not doing anything about it. Why not? Because for them to do something about whatever problem is that they're complaining about means that they would have to give up some type of ease, some type of escape. And because they value that escape or that relief above anything else, it's all about the relief, they will put up with whatever the disturbing thing that's bothering them. People go quite far in putting up with even harmful people just to preserve their ease. For example, let's say you have a woman, let's call her Mary, and Mary is married to an alcoholic, abusive husband. That man, when he's upset, when he feels rejected, instead of owning up to his own feelings and processing things, he picks up the bottle, begins to drink, goes at home, beats his wife and his children. Thing is, why is Mary still there? Why? Because she gets a pat on the back being a married woman that supports her husband. Because Mary lacks self-worth, she now compensates through control. And one way she's being controlling is by pushing people to accept her as this loving wife who bears her dysfunctional husband. So she's actually taking advantage of her husband's bad behavior to generate sympathy, to trigger sympathy from others. That's why she's still there. She can go to sleep at night feeling relieved about herself on the inside. So she is a junkie relying on the approval of others. That's why. Because there's no good reason for her to stay in that dangerous situation, can even get her killed. Another thing, why are the people around in the community allowing this to happen? Why do they intervene and shut down that marriage? Here's why. The fact this woman was willing to put up with this man means this woman is disturbing. That means As long as she's with that man, she's locked. So the rest of the community will not witness how disturbing she is. The moment that abusive husband is out of the way, she'll become controlling towards other people in a reckless way. And everyone will have to put up with this embarrassing situation. And people don't want that. Or let's say they break up the marriage and they have children. Who's going to become a stepdad to those children? Then the community has to deal with the care of the children too. And people don't want that. They want to be left alone. So because the people there don't want to own up that they'll have to do something about the situation in the long run, because they don't want to be dedicated to the solution, which will cost them something, they will put up with the problem. The children who are being abused over there, they don't want them to turn into monsters just like their dad, so they'll compensate by being extra kind towards them. Why? By being so extra kind to those children, children will think, whoa, the people in the community are good people. Just my dad was fucked up. Hold on a minute. If the people around you are such good people, how come they didn't deal with your father? How come, what about your mom? She has no role in it? So this is what I mean. Society will offer you compensations. You will shut your mouth. You will be quiet and not call them out. That's what they do. A lot of these jobs with high salaries are only there so you will shut your mouth and not call things out. So, an example I give unto you of the battered wife, while she's still there, there's something off with her for putting up with this. And there's something off with the community also for allowing this to continue. Now, people in the world don't put up with absolutely everything. There are certain things they'll say, hey, enough, I don't take this. And when they stand up and they don't take something, they're going to highlight it like, hey, I have boundaries, I have self-worth, I have self-respect, blah, blah, blah. No, they don't. The people either resist out of survival because something's actually objectively dangerous, going to harm them, or they resist when they're forced to admit things you want to admit. So anytime people keep putting up with something that is disturbing and harmful, I'm telling you, watch out with those people. Because whatever stress and unrest they get by putting up with that, they're going to take it out somewhere. And don't be around so you don't become either the outlet or you become collateral damage of what they're doing. So check people's motives. What is the definitive outcome they're longing for? Well, that's it for now. Keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.